Okay, hello everyone, and welcome to our first webinar for the fall. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Katie Makahonyuk. I'm the Plant Health Technical Advisor for SARM Division 4, which is Northeast Saskatchewan. I'm also helping out in Division 1 right now. So today is a bit of an update for you. We've had some changes to the Weed Control Act, and we've got Corey Jacob here. He's the specialist for provincial weed control in the province. He's going to tell us all about the changes and everything that we need to know about the Weed Control Act. For those of you that are looking for continuing education credits, we are able to offer one CEC for regulations today. There will be time for questions at the end. And if any of you want to use this webinar for future reference, it'll be posted onto the SARM website, probably sometime next week. So with that, I guess I will turn my camera off and let Corey take over.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Katie. I do need to get my presentation just up. And that would help. There we go. Perfect. Just Katie, can you see my presentation screen only, correct?
I can see your presentation screen and your video. Perfect.
Okay, thank you very much. All right, so thanks, Katie, for the introduction there. Thanks to everyone for attending this afternoon about a bit of an update to the Weed Control Act, or the Minister's Order update. So, as Katie had said, my name is Corey Jacob. I'm, I guess, the new Weed Control Specialist, the new Clark, as Clark did retire back in at the end of March, so that's about six months ago. As you can tell, I'm battling a cold right now. I'm on day 5. So I'm just going to try to do my best to get through the presentation. I hope you can hear me decently well. My voice is definitely not the same, but just going to try to limp through it here and stop and take breaks when I need to. So with that, we're just going to get into the into the talk here, and we'll go from there. So.
Hey, Corey, I'm just seeing your notes view and the next slide.
I have my screens backwards.
Oh.
just a sec. Sorry about that. I'm gonna have to just a second. My apologies to the attendees.
No pressure. Don't worry.
Change my screens around here. Okay.
There we go. Good? That looks great.
Okay, perfect. Thanks, Katie, and thanks for pointing that out. Do you think I could get it right? And I always make a mistake, but okay. So just to start with, so we made the Minister's Order updates to the weeds list. The Weed Control Act really came into effect in 2010. So I mean, we're 15 years now, later. So there were some different weeds that were coming onto our radar or coming off radar. Just some changes that needed to be made, and of course, Clark had kind of spearheaded this at the beginning, and then of course his health issues had slowed us down with the act coming into completion. But it did, of course, come into effect back in July with the new weeds that were added. So a lot of this is based on invasive weeds. So I just wanted to maybe just touch on what invasive weeds are. So typically invasive weeds are introduced to the province from elsewhere, typically from overseas. So a couple of examples are leafy spurge being introduced from Europe and kochia from Eurasia. They're adaptive to gaps in Saskatchewan habitats or are introduced without a natural set of predators, so they're allowed to become established and flourish. And they aggressively dominate native landscapes, crops, and pastures. And in some more severe cases, they can damage infrastructure. So they're very aggressive. They can displace other weeds or other populations. So we want to get them on, under control or eradicated if at all possible. So I'm just going to go over the different categories of weeds as well that we have under the Weed Control Act. So we have prohibited weeds. For the most part, these are absent from the province. They're very rare, having just recently entered the province. They don't occupy a large area. They're quite small if they're present in the province. Might be limited to one area or one RM or one field. With this, the enforcement goal is eradication. We don't want these weeds to become established at all. We want them to become scorched earth eradication, gone, no questions asked. So we don't want them to become established in the province at all. So that's really where we're at with prohibited weeds. With noxious weeds, typically they're established well beyond eradication, in one region or part of the province, but they might be absent from other areas of the province. So our enforcement goal is typically eradication of isolated infestation. So if it's a small infestation or small infestations in one area, we can eradicate them, or containment and control if it's a larger infestations. If they're maybe a few quarter sections in size or hundreds of acres, and it's a lot harder to eradicate that, then we focus on just containing it from spreading and trying to control what is there. And then, of course, nuisance weeds. So, Clark always used the term ubiquitous, so they're ubiquitous throughout Saskatchewan. So basically, they're everywhere, but they continue to be regulated due to maybe an aggressive spreading nature or their spreading characteristics, such as being wind blown, or they have aggressively creeping roots, like maybe Canada thistle. Also, really, to have any enforcement activity on these, you need to receive a complaint from a ratepayer first as well with nuisance weeds. We've got some changes to the different weeds that we're coming, into or out of each respective category. So I'm just going to start kind of at the top of the list with some of the weeds that we did declare as prohibited, and work down into noxious and nuisance. So start with, we declared Palmer amaranth as a prohibited weed under the Weed Control Act. So it's a weed that's originated in the southern United States of America. In the southern U.S., it's resistant to most herbicides, right? Group 2, 3, 4, 5, 9, 10, 14, 15, and 27. It's reported in Ward County, North Dakota, which is about 100 kilometers from the Saskatchewan border. It's present in Manitoba, but really in a very small number. Water hemp is more present there. It's also been in some counties in Montana that border Saskatchewan. So that's really why we've put it a little bit harder on the radar, as it borders the province, and it's very aggressive in nature. It's dioecious, so there's separate male and female plants. A lot of genetic diversity there is shared between the male and female plants when they're making their progeny. That's why we see the high amount of herbicide resistance there. They're prolific seed producers as well. So it's a weed that if we ever catch it in the provincial borders here, we want it eradicated ASAP, because it's going to cause a lot of problems. Any of the populations that were in northern Montana or North Dakota that border Saskatchewan, to my knowledge, they claim they've eradicated those populations, but it's still good to be vigilant with regard to those weeds. But again, we kind of call it the invasive pigweeds, as they look a lot similar to like our redwood pigweed, or very similar characteristics to that, as they're in the amaranth family. The other pigweed that we declared as prohibited is water hemp. So it's originated in the southern United States, just like Palmer amaranth. Resistant to herbicide groups 2, 4, 5, 9, 14, 15, and 27 in the United States. In Canada, it's resistant to less, but still a significant amount of herbicide groups. It's been present in Ontario for quite a while, and the last few years in Manitoba, as well in our southern states in Montana and North Dakota. So present in 2 counties in North Dakota and Montana, just south of the border. Again, a very prolific, aggressive pigweed. We don't want them to be established here. So we've also been doing a bit of a survey for these pigweeds in the fall, where I've gone out and targeted soybean fields or pulse crops, where they'd be very, very easy to notice, and they'd be standing up feet above the crop. We haven't been able to detect any of the weeds in the province, but again, we're staying vigilant with just monitoring and and really being ready to act on them as quickly as possible, as I'm expecting they will show up at some time. So those are two big ones to be on the lookout for that we did declare as prohibited. As well, we also declared Himalayan balsam as a prohibited weed. It's a very aggressive plant that produces a large number of seeds. There is one significant infestation in Prince Albert that has infested a drainage pathway to the Saskatchewan River, and some small localized populations in the province as well that I believe are being managed appropriately. There's also Viper's bug loss or Patterson's curse. This weed is a member of the borage family. To my knowledge, there's an isolated population in southeast Saskatchewan. So far, I mean, that's they could possibly have spread, but the one reason that it is a weed of concern is that there's it's toxic throughout the plant, and it can cause liver disease. And the liver toxins can be transferred to honey in the nectar. So that's the big one there. It's just that it could, there's some significant human health consequences there if of course if that nectar or if that gets transferred into any honey. So that's why it is declared as a prohibited weed. There's also Dyer's woad, which is a member of the mustard family. This weed is a native to Russia. It was introduced to North America as a source of indigo dye, actually. The flowers form in pear-shaped pods that turn black when ripe. And it's also present in several counties in Montana. I have reports of it, but again, that's about as far, as I can tell you about Dyer's woad. I don't know a lot more about it, but it's another aggressive invasive weed that if we do have it present here, we want to eradicate it as soon as possible. Orange hawkweed. This is an invasive perennial weed. It forms a rosette and sets up the flower stalk. Flower stalk very similar to what we have for dandelion. Of course, it reproduces by seed, at above and below ground stolons, which are similar to like how a strawberry reproduces with those below ground stolons. As well, we have meadow hawkweed, which is again a very similar species to orange hawkweed. They're very similar, even by their look, right? But again, it's also an invasive perennial that we did declare as a prohibited weed. It forms a rosette, sets up the flowering stalk similar to a dandelion. Of course, reproduces by seed and above and below ground stolons, similar to what a strawberry would. Excuse me. So lesser known weeds, we did also declare bighead knapweed as a prohibited weed. This was introduced as an ornamental, but escaped into wild areas. Currently, there's no registered herbicides for control in the United States or Canada. But if you do decide to mow it and remove top growth, it does recover from rootstocks. There is one small infestation in Washington State that's been under eradication for 25 years, and they just keep on, whether they're mowing it or trying to spray it with something that's not on label, but they've got it contained. But of course, they've been trying to control it for 25 years, and they really can't successfully eradicate it. There's also brown ray knapweed. This is introduced as an ornamental. This weed prefers more of the cooler moisture habitats, so maybe not as much of a possibility of becoming established in the brown or dark brown soil zone, but maybe more of a possibility of it becoming established in the black or the gray soil zones of the province. We also have Japanese knotweed and giant knotweed. These are very much invasive plants. They're more invasive and aggressive in the mild maritime rainforest habitats of BC. Recently reported in Alberta with 2 sites in Calgary. As well, they can be very damaging to infrastructure. So they have creeping roots with shoots that will break through asphalt and concrete, as we can see in the picture here in the bottom right. And of course, they can cause damage to roadways and buildings. And these weeds do reproduce through creeping roots as well. So again, just another aggressive and infrastructure damaging plant there that we just don't want to get established in the province. Actually, another very aggressive species too is Medusa head adventinata. So these are grass weeds that we declared as prohibited. They're very, they provide a fair bit of early season competition with winter annual grasses. They do leave quite an early season maturity, which leaves a fair level of dry biomass later on the growing season for a higher, likelihood of wildfires. Both weeds yet to be documented in Saskatchewan, present in the states immediately to the south, so of course, Montana and North Dakota. The big one for Medusa head and Ventonata is there's no herbicides registered for in Canada for control and any of the perennial forage or in-crop weed control in annual or winter annual crops. So the hard thing is if they do become, established here in the province or show up, it's really hard to fight them when we don't have anything for herbicides that are on labels. So we have to go to other means to try to control them. Or maybe, of course, we can look at a minor use or emergency herbicide registration as well. But just, our back is up against the wall with some of these very aggressive and invasive weeds. Moving on, next we have teasels, declared as prohibited. Again, they're very tall, rough biennial plants, present in western Minnesota, not anywhere near Saskatchewan, but of course we did add it onto the list, just get it could sit there for quite a long time that we do have it on the prohibited weed list. Plumeless thistle, this is a close relative to nodding thistle, again a very aggressive thistle. It's a biannual weed that's been reported in Montana, one of the counties bordering southern Saskatchewan, I guess that would be. So a very aggressive thistle species, and of course we don't want to get established here. Excuse me. We also have European common reed, or Phragmites, which has been declared as prohibited in the province. It's a perennial riparian or semi-aquatic grass. The invasive species are far more aggressive than the native species. So we do have a native and an invasive species of this weed. Any monoculture stands can displace other plants, can interfere with waterfall nesting habitat. Even if you're driving at night and you've got these tall weeds on both sides of the road, right? They could also mean a bit of a danger for passing by traffic and a possibility for, a hot spot for accidents or other animals as well, maybe hiding in them as well, just to lurk or to run out in front of vehicles deer like to do sometimes. We also did declare crown vetch as a prohibited weed. This is a low-growing perennial legume. It's a legume vine weed. It spreads by seed and creeping rhizomes. It's been introduced as a forage species in the province as well. And it's also poisonous to non-ruminant livestock, so horses, pigs, and poultry. So again, it is, it's a forage species, but it also has some other, being poisonous to non-ruminant livestock. It is some justification if you're having it as a prohibited species. That covers the majority of weeds that were added as prohibited. I've got a couple that were kept as prohibited for aquatic species, and we'll move into the noxious and the nuisance weeds. So four aquatic species were kept as prohibited. Just so our legislation, it gives the Ministry of Environment's legislation time as well to catch up and maybe even mirror ours, or at least meet ours as well, so nothing is not being covered. So the first aquatic species is yellow floating heart. As we can see here, I got some very nice pictures from the Arnold-McCormick Park. Curly-leaf pondweed as well. So this is another aquatic species that was kept on as prohibited. Flowering rush as well. We kept it as a prohibited weed species. There's some infestations in the province. We were dealing with one, I think it was last summer, in southeast Saskatchewan. So yeah, it's present, and I think the Invasive Species Council as well, or Sask Invasives. With the cold, my mind's not working at 100% capacity, but they've done a fair bit as well with going out and getting rid of flowering rush where it is, present in the province as well. And of course, Eurasian water milfoil is the fourth aquatic species that we've kept as prohibited on the weed list for now under the Weed Control Act. So moving from the prohibited weeds to noxious weeds, we moved two species that were prohibited to noxious. The first one was hound's tongue. This is more Clark's words, and it is more common in southeast Saskatchewan than we had first thought. There is a biological control agent, so there's a root weevil for it as well. Given those circumstances that it's more common than we think, and there is a root weevil, so there's some biological control, it does make it acceptable fit into a noxious weed category. The other weed was common mullein, so of course we moved this from prohibited to noxious. It's been recorded in the province, but often short-lived due to the harsh winter climate and dry weather we have. The weed doesn't like our harsh winters, basically. Some of our warming winters means that the plant might be starting to persist more frequently or peak back into the province. But again, the weed that we felt comfortable moving to the noxious category. As well, we also moved woolly burdock to the noxious category, which is a biennial weed. It's got a deep stout taproot that spreads by bird seed capsules that cling to to animal and furs and clothing. So a few weeds do spread kind of by clinging to animals or clothing and getting spread around quite well, actually, quite efficiently. One species that we did actually end up keeping as a noxious weed, this is kochia. And this came feedback when we did hear some feedback, we did hear it quite loud and clear about wanting to keep kochia as a noxious weed. It is well established in the brown and dark brown soil zones. Creeping in, in these drier years, it does creep into the black and the other more moist soil zones, especially when it's hot and dry. The main reason there was just still, when we keep it as a noxious weed, it gives the weed inspectors more opportunity, to be proactive with managing the weed. As well, maybe we can limit the spread of the herbicide resistance, because we've got Group 2, Group 9 herbicide resistance has been around for quite a while. But of course, Group 4 and Group 14 herbicide resistance have showed up, and this might also help us slow down or mitigate the spread of the extra herbicide resistant biotypes with kochia. So for now, it's being kept as a noxious weed. But we did also add one more of an urban weed to the noxious weed list. Creeping bellflower. Again, this did come back as some of our feedback from our consultations. It is a very highly invasive and aggressive weed, well established in urban areas. I've gotten several complaints about it this year, again, in Moose Jaw and Saskatoon, and I'm sure it's established in other centers, but those were two centers that really, there was, people were quite vocal about the issue. So again, now we have the ability, this regulated weed to enforce the act when necessary to control the weed. Of course, there were a few species that were downgraded from noxious to nuisance. These species we felt were, they're well established in the province. They're ubiquitous. They're not going to be, they're not going to easily be contained or controlled. And it makes more sense to downgrade them. So the first species downgraded from noxious to nuisance, of course, is Canada thistle. An interesting tidbit here was one of the original species to be regulated in the first Noxious Weeds Act in 1909, so 116 years ago. Again, it's found widely across the province. Of course, still regulatory action can be in response to complaints from any ratepayer for Canada thistle, and of course, enforcing the Weed Control Act. As well, we did also downgrade some of the thistle species. So annual sow thistle, spiny annual sow thistle, and perennial sow thistle. Again, with our reasoning being that they're very well established across the province. There's no area of the province that they're lacking from. And of course, movement, the nuisance category will will still allow the weed inspectors to respond to any complaints or issues that any ratepayers have. So again, they've been downgraded, but they can still be dealt with very, very well and very easily. We also downgraded from noxious to nuisance, nodding thistle. Of course, this weed has historically been found in large patches in the province. In 1964, there was a biocontrol agent introduced and has brought the populations down quite a fair bit. So again, there's the nodding thistle. Seeded weevil has really done quite well over the last 50 or 60 years to control that weed, or have it somewhat brought under control so it is contained. So that was one reason why we thought it was appropriate for it to be downgraded to a nuisance weed. Of course, prickly lettuce, which is another problem weed. We did, of course, feel because it's widely spread across the province. Again, it was ranked 63rd in the 2014 weed survey. Is just a little FYI aside. But yeah, it's well established across the province. It can still be dealt with any weed control. Complaints from ratepayers, we thought it was appropriate to move it to the nuisance category. So that really is a quick overview of, excuse me, of the weeds that were added to the different categories, or downgraded or moved within the different categories for this update. And of course, we're going to try to commit to looking over the weed list a little bit more often. Maybe every 5 years, and just seeing if there's something that is on our radar that needs to be addressed, or something that could maybe be loosened up, that it's not as big of a problem as we once thought it was. So I also just want to give a bit of a reminder that there's also your SARM PHTAs right throughout the province that can help with any of the weed control issues. So if you have any questions, of course, about the changes to the weed lists or what's been updated or changed, all the PHTAs are quite aware of the changes as well, and you can also reach out to myself. But they are there to help, and they do a very good job of helping or finding pathways if they don't know the answer as well. Because they do talk to me quite a fair bit as well. But they're a very good resource as well. Just reminding everyone that they're there, and they're very, very happy to help. I also did want to touch on the invasive plant control program, because of course, some of these weeds will fit in under there, and some might not. But of course, this is also available for providing financial assistance to whether it be RMs or First Nations or landowners to help with the cost to undertake, coordinate control for prohibited or noxious weeds. So of course, if you come across any of these weeds that I mentioned, or if there's weeds that are already on the weeds list that have been there for a while, you do have some help to help control some of the costs of chemical for noxious weed, up to half, and then of course for prohibited weeds it also helps with the application costs. So of course there is that can be utilized if a landowner or producer or would like to as well. So it's a good program. Of course, any of the SARM PHTAs can give you some more information about that if you're curious, or you can also ask myself, and I can try to address any questions about that. But really, that's all I had for you this afternoon. I know I'm a little bit short on time with the webinar supposed to be a little bit longer, but that really is in a nutshell the updates we did to the Weed Control Act with the Minister's Order. And just a little bit of the weeds we changed up, we took out, and yeah, some of the quick changes there. So, are there any questions, any concerns?
Perfect. Thank you so much, Corey. The only question I have so far is just asking if these slides will be shared with the attendees. As far as I know, we usually post the slideshow along with the recorded webinar on the SARM website, so that should be available within the coming weeks, if that's good with you.
Well, that's fine with me. Happy to share the information and have it available for attendees.
Okay. I do have a question, just on woolly burdock and mullein. Those were not regulated prior to this, were they? I just noticed in I just noticed in your slideshow that they've gone from prohibited down to noxious, and as far as I can remember, they were not regulated before this change, but I
So
could be wrong.
that might be an error in my understanding of a couple things there.
Okay.
But regardless, they have been moved as they are declared as noxious weeds in the province. But I can double check that. That might be an error on my part as well there.
Okay, no problem. One more question. Any chance kochia will be added to the IPCP program for rebate?
It's a hard one with kochia. I'm gonna never say never, but it's a hard one with where to start with that weed. Yeah, I mean, we've tried to keep the invasive plant control program to more invasive weeds that are problematic. I'm not saying kochia is not problematic. It's just it's a hard one to, yeah. I don't have a good answer right now for the person who asked that question, but I do appreciate the hard question.
Yeah, and we can definitely keep discussing it with with the ministry and with SARM, just reviewing it every year and talking about it, and like you said, never say never. So
yeah, I mean kochia added, we'd have to up the budget. But I mean, if it helps with uptake with weed control, it's not a bad thing to consider. I'll put it that way. So
yeah, definitely. I'm not seeing any more questions pop up, so this is kind of the last call, you guys. Any other questions related to being a weed inspector? Just general weed control questions that you guys might have? This is a good opportunity. Corey's a good guy to talk to about this stuff, so I'll just give you a minute to get them typed in, and if any more questions come in, we can always follow up later. So
yeah, and I've got my contact information on the screen there as well.
okay, oh, there we go. Can you post the program to fund for this weed control again? Yes. Can you go back to your IPCP slide, Corey?
Sure.
Yeah, so the information for this program can be found on the SARM website, so sarm.ca. Go under your programs tab and it should be listed there. All of the information around, sorry, I can't think today. All the information you need will be on that site. Also, if you just want to talk to someone, give any of the plant health technical advisors a call, and we can guide you in the right direction. So, the next question: can this presentation be shared with the Ministry of Highways so that they know what weeds they should be controlling as well?
Absolutely. I mean, anytime I've reached out to the Ministry of Highways, I always get feedback that they want to help or that they're interested in this. Sometimes they get caught up in the weeds a little bit, or they're not sure what they're looking at as well. So I don't see why it can't be shared with them.
Awesome. One more question. This is a good one. I get this one quite often. Does the sprayer applicator need to have their certification on their own land or other farmers' land?
I'm not 100% sure, to be honest with you. I don't really deal with that question.
I actually have looked into that one. So if a farmer is applying herbicide to their own land, they do not need to have their applicator's license. But if they are doing custom for a neighbor and getting paid for it, then they do need to have their license.
Okay.
I had to look into that one. My husband was going to do some custom for neighbors, so I had to look into that one specifically. So
thanks for that, Katie. That makes perfect sense. If you're doing it for profit, you need to be licensed, essentially. Yeah.
And just to cover liability, that kind of thing. So Yeah. Okay. I'm not seeing any more pop up here, so I think I'll let you go, Corey. You look like you need to go and sit on a couch somewhere. Make yourself a hot toddy or something.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for attending. We really appreciate you being here today. As always, if you have any questions, feel free to give any of your PHTAs a call or Corey. And if you ever have any suggestions for future webinars, definitely give us a shout because we're always looking for more ideas. So with that, thank you so much, Corey. We really appreciate you being here and have a great day, everyone.
Thank you.